Welcome back. This week marks 1 year since the devastating California wildfires that left 31 people dead, destroyed thousands of homes and commercial properties, and caused billions of dollars in damage. A new survey from NORC at the University of Chicago finds only 13% of homeowners have begun reconstruction, 13%. And more than 70% of residents are still very concerned that insurance will not cover all the costs to rebuild. The LA County Recovers Board reported that only 4 homes have actually been completely rebuilt out of the roughly 11,000 that were destroyed. 4 homes in 1 year. Joining me now is the California Post opinion editor, Joel Pollak. Joel, welcome. Great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. What can you tell us? How is it possible that only 4 homes have been rebuilt in a year?
Well, it's a combination of the factors that were mentioned in that survey. The insurance costs and the delays in payouts are certainly a big factor. But one other factor is the slow pace of permitting. The city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, they have been extremely slow in approving permits for residents. And in fact, the LA City Council has not yet decided whether to waive permitting fees for homeowners who lost their homes through no fault of their own. They're not looking to remodel their kitchens or bathrooms. They're just looking to rebuild their homes. And more than a year later, there still has not been a decision about whether to waive the permitting fees. To give you some idea of what those fees cost, it's something in the range of $30,000 to $40,000 just to file the paperwork to start rebuilding your home. So there is inaction on the part of local and state leaders, and there is just a lack of leadership and accountability that is keeping people from rebuilding.
You know, I don't know how that's possible, particularly since, permitting and deregulation has been a priority of the Trump administration. I mean, when I speak with companies, like from the oil companies to any other highly regulated company like a financial services, they all talk about the permitting process needing to be easier. And that's exactly why the president has made deregulation and making permitting easier as a policy priority. And yet California is not doing it?
The president came in and used his emergency powers in his first week in office last January to waive the permitting requirements for any federal permits that might be necessary for rebuilding. But that has not happened on the city and state level, and there are still several layers of bureaucracy that people have to move through. In addition, there are all kinds of taxes and fees that affect rebuilding. For example, there is what they call a mansion tax, Measure ULA, on certain properties in Los Angeles. That is holding up rebuilding because it's preventing people from selling their lots. It's also preventing investors from coming in and building apartment buildings because they're going to have to pay a massive tax if they ever sell those buildings. And the mayor agreed that the tax should be waived, but the city couldn't get its act together in time to submit a proposal to the state legislature to waive the tax. So there is inaction and ineptitude and a lack of leadership on the state and local level, and that is really hurting the ability of residents to do what many have wanted to do since January 7th last year, which is to begin rebuilding immediately.
What a complete shame. I mean, President Trump is issuing a stern ultimatum to Governor Gavin Newsom over the alleged fraud in his state as well. The president freezing $10 billion in federal money. Governor Newsom's office is firing back, though, at the president. He wrote this on X. While Donald Trump runs his little mouth, Gavin Newsom is busy blocking $125 billion in fraud, arresting criminals, stealing from taxpayers, and shutting down the exact scam artists that Trump pals around with, writes Gavin Newsom. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is also issuing a stark warning to California. She's threatening to probe the state to uncover the fraud. Joel, what's your take here?
California has legalized fraud. There are benefits that you can get without a social security number. If you're the governor, you can raise money for yourself and your family through what California calls behested payments. That is, donors can give to foundations that are run by your spouse or your family members. And that's a regular part of doing business as a politician in California. California has legalized fraud. And that's one of the reasons that President Trump is suspending payments to California. It's also one of the reasons that Congress has been reluctant to give $34 billion to Gavin Newsom that he's requested for fire aid. Now, fire victims need that money, But you can't expect federal taxpayers to throw good money after bad if it's just going to be wasted in California. And I've suggested since last January, when the president came to Palisades, that he appoint a special master, or that Congress create an office of a special master to oversee all of the federal money coming into California for fire aid and maybe for other things as well. I think that's the key that picks the lock. If American taxpayers know that someone is overseeing this money and only approving it for the purposes that it's allocated for, then I think you'll see greater willingness on the part of the federal government and the Trump administration to work with Gavin Newsom. But California has to be under adult supervision, because Gavin Newsom has lost tens of billions of dollars through the state unemployment insurance department, through various other programs and policies that just don't have any checks and balances.
Yeah, you just made such a great point. And my very smart father-in-law, who passed away years ago, used to make the same point to me. He would say to me, Maria, people do what you inspect, not what you expect. And that's exactly what you just said. People do what you inspect, not what you expect. Joel, thank God you're there, and the New York Post is moving to California. You were recently named opinion editor of the newly formed California Post. Congratulations. The California Post is set to launch in a few weeks on January 26th as a sister paper to the New York Post. The new paper is vowing to hold lawmakers like Gavin Newsom accountable for mismanagement of last year's wildfires and focus on giving readers a different point of view in California. Congrats on the new role. Tell us what we should expect from the California Post.
Well, you can expect the same irreverent and hard-hitting coverage that the New York Post has become famous for. And we really have an excellent team of journalists. They really are a dream team, and it's an honor and a privilege to work alongside these people. They are already working hard to do the investigating, to hold politicians accountable, and of course to entertain our readers with stories on sports and entertainment that have uniquely California flavor.
That's wonderful. We will be along for the ride and hope to talk with you along the way, Joel. Thanks so much.
Thank you.